It's Soup Kettle Good. It's the Betty Crocker Vegetable Noodle Soup. Garden vegetables and real egg noodles in a golden broth that's now meat-flavored. Fresh cooked at home, yet ready with practically no work. All you do is add water to the contents of that package, add a little butter, simmer, and it's done. The Betty Crocker Vegetable Noodle Soup ingredients.
General Mills presents Famous Jury Trials, fictionalized dramatizations of cases typical of many taken from actual court history. The dramatic story of our courts where rich and poor alike, guilty and innocent, stand before the bar of justice.
Mom, let's have an apple pie.
Make an apple pie with Apple Pie Quick. You buy one package, but you get two products. Apple slices for filling and wonderful pie crust mix. Gentlemen in the audience, join me now in dreaming of a thick, juicy wedge of apple pie. The crust flakes at the touch of your fork. The filling's right out of this world. And that's an Apple Pie Quick pie. And yet it's so easy. Pie's in the oven in 15 minutes.
Mom, let's have an apple pie.
Make an apple pie with Apple Pie Quick.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are the judges of the evidence to be laid before you. Be just and fear not, for the true administration of justice is the foundation of good government.
The people versus Bessie Malden.
Tonight, Famous Jury Trials brings you the story of a mother who sought to keep her daughter from evil but found herself on trial for murder. Mrs. Bessie Malden was arrested for the murder of wealthy Henry Nicholas. The trial jumped into national prominence when Miss Vera Carson, a well-known attorney, accepted the defense. Miss Carson was a very beautiful woman, as well as a capable attorney, which was noted by the prosecutor in his opening address to the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the state charges that Bessie Malden shot and killed Henry Nicholas on the 7th of June. As attorney for the state, it is my duty to prove this fact and ask you for a verdict of guilty. You may probably feel as I do, very unchivalrous. I am seeking the life of one woman and opposing another, the defense counsel. Clearly, this is not a job I would have selected.
The jury hardly needed any urging to have its attention called to the beautiful defense counsel. But when the prosecutor was finished, she in turn told the jury,
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm not here as a woman, but as the attorney for the defendant. This fact the prosecutor has chosen to forget, or has the prosecutor a different motive in focusing attention upon me? Is his case so weak that he must distract you from the inadequacy of his proof? Ladies and gentlemen, I would be very wary of the state's evidence.
Defense counsel had turned the prosecutor's words to her own advantage, but the victory was short-lived. The prosecutor did have a powerful case and began building for a verdict. Medical and police witnesses established that Henry Nicholas was shot to death in his own office at or about 8:30 p.m. June 7th. The prosecutor then started to connect Bessie Malden with the crime by calling one of her neighbors, Mrs. Krause, who was sworn in.
Mrs. Krause, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, self regard?
I swear.
Be seated, please.
Mrs. Krause, you're a neighbor of Bessie Malden, the defendant?
To Mrs. Malden next door I live for 5 years.
I see. Now, Mrs. Malden was a widow with one daughter, wasn't she?
Yes. Mrs. Malden has daughter Judy. When to work she goes, I watch Judy until she's grown up. And the job she takes, too.
Judy worked for Henry Nicholas, didn't she?
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Krause, my records show that Judy started to work as a stenographer for $20 a week. And that within 5 months, she was raised to $45?
Raises Judy got very fast. Mrs. Malden tells me she does not like it.
You don't have to help me with the dishes, Mrs. Krause. I'm nervous and, well, I feel better when I have something to do.
Judy, it is who worries you, huh?
Yes. She's got another raise. Mrs. Krause, Henry Nicholas isn't giving her those raises on her merit, and she's always going out with him.
Love it is, maybe.
If Mr. Nicholas wants to marry Judy, why doesn't he come up to the house? Why does she always go out to meet him? And all those expensive gifts. Men don't spend so much money on their secretary.
Judy is here. Hello, Judy.
Hello, Mrs. Krause. Mom on her pet peeve again?
What else can I think about when my only child is...
Well?
All that money Mr. Nicholas spends on you, Judy.
Look, Mom, he's got plenty. Taking me to a show or a nightclub don't mean any more to him than an ice cream soda to some of the boys around here.
But, Judy, even rich men don't throw money away. Sooner or later, they expect something in return.
Oh, I'm sick of all this arguing. Mr. Nicholas is a swell boss and a good date. You're entitled to your own opinion, but I don't have to listen to it. If you don't stop, Mom, I'll just have to move out of here.
How did Mrs. Malden react to Judy's conduct, Mrs. Krause?
Oh, angry she became. She told me, Judy is too young and better she does not know. She said, I blame Mr. Nicholas.
The prosecutor continued to sketch in the familiar background of a poor young girl and her rich employer. And after defense had cross-examined Mrs. Krause, the prosecutor began forging another link in his chain of evidence by calling Lou Tabor, a stout man with a ruddy outdoor complexion who was sworn in and asked,
Mr. Tabor, what is your work?
I'm the doorman at the Chickadee Club.
Were you present when the deceased Henry Nicholas and Judy Malden drove up one evening?
Yes, their cab pulled up and I eased over to open the door for the customer.
So this is the famous Chickadee Club, Henry.
Well, you'll like it, Judy. Keep the change, driver.
Good evening. Welcome to the Chickadee Club.
Good evening, Lou. Pretty well crowded tonight?
It's still early, Mr. Nicholas. You'll have no trouble getting a good table.
Judy. Oh, come right home with me.
Judy, who is this lady?
I'm her mother. Judy, I want you to come home.
Ma, this is the worst thing you could have done to me.
I had to.
Well, we were just about to go in and have dinner, Mrs. Malden.
I don't want her to be with you. You're rotten clear through, Mr. Nicholas.
Ma, if you don't keep quiet...
I can't. Not after what I found out. And I can prove this, Judy. Mr. Nicholas is married.
Oh, well, for goodness sake, I know he's married.
You know, and still you...
Here's the way it is, Mrs. Malden. My wife is out west getting a divorce. I'll be free pretty soon.
But you're not free now. Judy doesn't know what she's doing. She's a child. But you know better, Mr. Nicholas. There's no excuse for you. You were just too rotten to live. And I could kill you myself for what you've done. Yes, I could kill you myself.
So, Mr. Tabor, you heard the defendant say, I could kill you myself for what you've done?
Yes, sir.
That's all. Your witness, Counselor.
Mr. Tabor, when Mrs. Malden told Henry Nicholas she could kill him, was she calm and collected, or was she laboring under great excitement?
Well, now
Objection, Your Honor. Defense is asking for an opinion, not a fact. But to call for an opinion without laying a
If Your
foundation...
Honor, please, I did ask for an opinion, but so simple an opinion that I thought it could have been answered by the witness. However, the prosecutor knows his own witness, and if he doesn't think him capable of answering so simple a question, well, I'll withdraw it.
Miss Carson, I'm trying to treat you with the consideration due a lady.
Mr. Prosecutor, I would appreciate your treating me with the respect due an opposing lawyer. No further questioning of the witness. Your Honor, I ask you to instruct the jury that the testimony of the present witness is no more valuable than the witness himself.
Once again, defense counsel retired with personal honors which reflected upon her ability but hardly weakened the state's case. When Lou Tabor stepped down, the prosecutor called Alex Fraser, an alert young man in a well-made conservative suit. He was sworn in and asked,
Mr. Fraser, you were a business acquaintance of the late Henry Nicholas?
Yes, sir, I was.
Where were you at or about 8:30 p.m. on June 7th?
I was discussing some business with Henry. About 8:30, the door opened and a woman rushed in.
Who was that woman?
The defendant there, Mrs. Malden.
What did Mrs. Malden want, Mr. Fraser?
She started yelling and insulting Henry. I thought she was crazy. But Henry said he knew Mrs. Malden and would I please excuse him.
So you stepped out of the room?
Into the next room, yes. I didn't try to listen, but Mrs. Malden was shouting so hard I couldn't help hearing what she said.
What did she say?
She yelled that her daughter Judy had moved away from her, and it was all Henry's fault. Then she yelled, I told you I'd kill you.
And what did you do, Mr. Fraser?
Well, after I heard the shot, I opened the door and rushed in. I saw Mrs. Malden running out, but I didn't chase her.
Why not?
Because Henry was lying on the floor with blood on his chest. I went over to him, but it was all over.
Mr. Fraser, did you notice anything near the body?
Yes, sir. A foreign-looking gun.
I now show you this gun, a German Luger. Is this the gun you found near Henry Nicholas's body?
Let me see, please. Yes, that's the gun.
Your Honor, I offer this gun in evidence.
Mark it in evidence.
That's all. Your witness, counsel.
Cross-examination did not alter Alex Fraser's testimony, which was almost an eyewitness account. And now the prosecutor prepared to add his final link by calling Antonia Carmando, a dark girl who was obviously ill at ease in the courtroom. She was sworn in and asked,
Mrs. Carmando, you live in the same building as Mrs. Malden?
Si, Signor L'Avvocato.
Miss Carmando, you married an American soldier, didn't you?
Oh, si. I come in this country. I am so happy. And then I get the paper from the police.
That was a subpoena asking you to come here to answer some questions. We just want you to help the court.
Me? Me help with this bigger court?
Yes.
Oh.
I show you this gun, Mrs. Carmando. German Luger. You recognize it?
It is like Oh, si, yes. It is pistol which my husband, Vincenzo, we bring home from the war.
And did you ever show this gun to the defendant, Mrs. Malden?
Oh, yes. 2 times I show Mrs. Malden the gun.
When was the last time you showed it to her?
That day, when the policemen, they come arrest her.
The day of the murder?
Si.
Were you with her when she was looking at the gun, Mrs. Carmando?
Oh, no. I go in the kitchen to make the tea. Mrs. Malden, she no stop for tea. She go away. And then I see this gun is gone.
Mrs. Carmando, you're sure you gave the gun to Mrs. Malden? And when she left, it was gone?
Oh, si. Yes, Signor L'Avvocato.
That's all. Your witness, counsel.
Defense cross-examined but could not change Mrs. Carmando's testimony. The prosecutor knew he had an airtight case as he rested, and he thought he understood why the defendant had chosen Miss Carson as her attorney. She had no defense except a tearful feminine plea to the jury. But again he was wrong, as he found out when the resourceful woman counsel began putting in her defense. What the startling defense was will be told in just a moment.
You know, this is a good program.
Uh-huh.
What are you so busy doing?
Sewing on that button you popped off your vest tonight.
You mean on that second piece of apple pie?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was good, wasn't it?
Good. Mary, nobody in the world can make an apple pie like you can.
Oh.
And tonight you really outdid yourself.
David.
Yeah?
I have a confession to make.
Confess ahead.
That wasn't my apple pie.
It wasn't yours.
Mm-mm.
Whose then?
Oh, I made it with apple pie quick.
Apple what?
Apple pie quick. Betty Crocker's product. It comes in a package.
Well,
Oh, no. You liked it, didn't you?
It was wonderful. But why use this apple pie quick, even if it is just as good as your own?
Oh, it's so much faster. The Pie Quick package has apple slices in it, so I don't need to peel apples. And wonderful apple pie spices. And pie crust mix that's every bit as good as my own.
Well, what do you know? Now we can have apple pie oftener, huh?
Oh, we can have it any time now. You know, it took me just 10 minutes to get that pie into the oven today.
I'm going to write a letter to General Mills. Dear General Mills, thank you for apple pie quick.
And now back to the courtroom where Bessie Malden is on trial for the murder of Henry Nicholas. Defense opened her case by placing the defendant on the stand in her own behalf. Mrs. Malden was sworn in and asked,
Mrs. Malden, your daughter Judy means a lot to you, doesn't she?
A lot. Judy's everything to me.
We understand, Mrs. Malden. Now, when Judy finished high school, she went to work for Henry Nicholas, didn't she?
Yes. But soon Henry Nicholas had raised her salary and was taking her to shows and nightclubs. He was turning her head, and I was afraid. She was all I had.
And then you found out that Henry Nicholas was married.
Yes. And that made me frantic. I imagined all sorts of things. I was scared.
Naturally. Now, on the 7th of June, did you visit Mrs. Carmando and ask to see her husband's gun?
Yes. And I took it.
You took the gun. What did you do then?
I went to Mr. Nicholas's office.
To kill him?
No. I wanted to frighten him. I thought that if I yelled and waved the gun, he'd think I was crazy and dangerous. I wanted him to fire Judy and keep away from her.
What time did you get to Henry Nicholas' office?
It was after 7 o'clock. Not later than 7:30.
You heard Alex Fraser testify that you came in about 8:30.
He was lying. I came in about 7 or 7:30. And when I opened the door, they were fighting.
And that's the way I feel about it, Alex.
If you pull that on me, Henry, I'll...
What, Mrs. Malden?
Huh? Who's she?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Malden, but I'm busy.
I don't care how busy you are. You're going to listen to me. Judy moved away from home today.
Well, I'm sorry.
You're lying. You've been filling her head with nonsense. But I'll show you.
Hey, she's got a gun.
I told you I'd kill you, Henry Nicholas.
Oh, wait, please, wait.
I'm sorry, lady. I've got the gun, Henry.
Let go of my arm. Give me that gun.
Not the way you feel now, lady. I'm going to keep this gun until you cool down. We'd better get her out of here, Henry.
So, Mrs. Malden, Alex Fraser knocked the gun out of your hand and took it away.
Yes. Then they both pushed me out.
And when you left, Henry Nicholas was still alive.
Yes, he was.
Where was the gun?
The last I saw of it, Alex Fraser was holding it in his hand.
So Alex Fraser was the last one to have the gun. That's all. Your witness, Counselor.
Mrs. Malden, you love your daughter very much, don't you?
Yes, very much.
You'd do anything to protect her from harm, wouldn't you?
Of course I would.
And if you thought that some man was a menace to our welfare, you wouldn't hesitate to fight him, would you? Nobody would count where your daughter was concerned.
The prosecutor continued to cross-examine, building up the idea that Bessie Malden was motivated by an overdeveloped mother instinct, which would cause her to kill if she thought she was helping her daughter. When the prosecutor finally permitted her to step down, defense called Judy Malden, who was sworn in, and asked...
Judy, I'm going to ask you some very personal questions.
Oh, ask me anything you want. It's all my fault, Mom, being charged with murder, but she didn't do it, honest. She didn't do it.
There, Judy. Now, this isn't the time to break down. You've got something very important to tell the jury.
I'm sorry.
All right. Now, on the 7th of June, the day Henry was killed, you moved out of your mother's home.
Yes.
Did you return to your home that day?
Yes. I came back to get my clothes.
And what time did you get there?
Around 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. What happened while you were in the house?
Well, Mom came in right after me. She was excited, and I knew she'd been up to something.
Judy. Oh, Judy, you're back.
No, I'm not. I just came to get my clothes.
Don't go, Judy, please.
Sorry, Mom.
Maybe Mr. Nicholas might fire you.
Me get fired? Swell chance. Hey, what have you been up to?
Nothing, Judy. Nothing at all.
You can't kid me. You've been pulling some stunt.
All right, then. I went up to see Mr. Nicholas. I thought that if I threatened him and he wasn't sincere...
You threatened him? How? What did you do?
I had Carmando's gun.
Mom, you didn't... Mom!
No. That other man took the gun away. I only wanted to frighten Mr. Nicholas.
Oh, what is he going to think of me now? Oh, I hope he's still in the office.
Hello?
Henry, this is Judy. Mom just told me about being in your office, and...
Oh, that's all right. There's no harm done.
Oh, I'm as sorry as anything, Henry. It won't happen again.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, Judy. I'm busy with Alex now, all right?
Of course. See you tomorrow, Henry.
Judy, I want you to repeat that. You were home with your mother after 8 o'clock. You called up Henry Nicholas in his office, and he was still alive.
Yes, he was.
Judy, as Mr. Nicholas' private secretary, did you learn anything about Mr. Alex Fraser?
Well, yes, I did. Mr. Fraser has a big store which Henry opened for him. It's supposed to be Mr. Fraser's business, but Henry kept all the papers in his name until Mr. Fraser paid back the money.
I see. Now, Judy, tell us what happened on June 7th while you were working.
Well, Henry was very angry. He kept walking up and down in his office, and he wouldn't talk to me. But just before I went home, he told me
Call up Alex Fraser and tell him to come up here tonight. I'll fix him.
Do you know what Mr. Nicholas was referring to?
No, I don't. All I know is that Henry was very angry at Mr. Fraser.
But you are certain that you spoke to Mr. Nicholas after your mother got home?
Oh, yes, I'm sure of that.
That's all. Your witness, Counselor?
Judy, you started to tell us what a bad little girl you were.
Yes, I didn't realize how bad.
And you feel that everything that happened is your fault, don't you?
Yes, it is. Mom was only trying to help me.
Would you do the same for your mother now? Help her?
Oh, of course I would. I'd do anything for Mom.
And if you knew that you could save your mother's life by making up a story about a telephone
call?
Oh,
no, that's true. I did speak to Henry after Mom came home.
We understand. You want to save your mother, Judy. I don't blame you. But I call attention to the joy.
It was easy to trap the remorseful girl into saying things which would discredit her testimony. But defense counsel did not appear too worried as she called her last witness, Detective Robert Latham, who was sworn in and asked...
Detective Latham, were you one of the policemen who investigated the death of Henry Nicholas?
I was, madam.
What was the cause of his death?
A bullet fired from a Luger pistol which entered the chest and severed the heart muscles.
Did you check the angle at which the bullet entered the body?
Yes, the bullet was traveling almost on a dead level between the gun and the body.
Does the angle of the bullet tell you anything about the size of the person who shot the gun?
Yes, if the killer was shorter than the victim, the bullet would be shot upwards. On the other hand, if the killer was taller than the victim, the bullet would range downward.
In this case, you say the bullet was fired on a level. What do you infer?
The person who shot Henry Nicholas was probably as tall as he was.
Mrs. Malden, will you please stand up? Thank you. Mrs. Malden is exactly 5 feet 2 inches. Would you infer that she shot the bullet which killed Henry Nicholas?
Mr. Nicholas was about 6 foot tall. From the angle of the bullet, I would not infer that she shot him.
Detective Latham, you saw Alex Fraser testify. Would you say that he was tall enough to have shot the fatal bullet?
He was tall enough, yes.
Thank you, Detective Latham. Your witness, Counselor.
Detective Latham, can you state as a matter of positive fact that the angle of the bullet is conclusive as to the height of the killer?
I would say it was probable, sir, not conclusive.
As a matter of fact, many other elements enter into consideration. For instance, Henry Nicholas might have been bending forward when the bullet entered his chest. That would alter the angle of the bullet, wouldn't it?
Probably, sir.
There are still further conditions which might alter the angle of a bullet, aren't there? You can't draw a positive inference, can you?
Although Detective Latham admitted that the angle of the bullet was not conclusive, the fact remained that under ordinary conditions, the killer would have to be much taller than the defendant was. When defense closed her case, she used this argument in her plea to the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it would be most natural for me at this time to offer a tearful plea for the sacrificing mother who tried to save her daughter from harm. But I don't have to. Mrs. Malden did not kill Henry Nicholas, and I want the facts themselves to convince you, not sympathy. Now, you heard the testimony of Mrs. Malden, who told you honestly that she'd gone to Henry's office with a gun. But she also told you how Alex Fraser took that gun away from her. Then Judy told you that she spoke to Henry Nicholas on the telephone after her mother came home. And she repeated what Henry had said, that Alex Fraser was with him. Alex, the man who now had the gun. Finally, and most conclusively, Detective Latham explained to you that the angle of the bullet precluded a person of Mrs. Malden's height. It had to be somebody taller. Again, Alex Fraser fits the bill.
Defense continued enumerating and explaining every bit of evidence put forth upon the trial. But when she rested, the prosecutor told the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, exactly what is the nature of the defense? Mrs. Malden says that Alex Fraser took her gun away. Naturally. What could she say? Judy Malden claimed she spoke to Henry while her mother was with her. Naturally. It was Judy's waywardness which caused her mother to get into trouble. Judy was remorseful. She wanted to help her mother. And finally, the angle of the bullet. Ladies and gentlemen, Detective Latham's explanation sounded very scientific and reasonable to the lay mind. However, the angle of the bullet must be taken in conjunction with all the other known facts, such as the fact that Mrs. Malden stole the death gun. Fact 2, Mrs. Malden admits pulling the gun on Henry Nicholas. Fact 3, Alex Fraser gave you an account of the shooting. These are facts to be added up, not inferences, but real truth.
The prosecutor continued to minimize defense's case and to build a logical indictment of the defendant. When he was finished, the judge charged the jury with the law, and they retired for deliberation. What their verdict was will be told in just a moment. But now,
To every woman who wants beautiful things for her home, for you, a 9-piece lace table set. Lace table mats of extraordinary beauty, patterned after rare old Belgian hand lace. The set includes a centerpiece, 4 mats for dinner plates, and 4 smaller mats for glassware. Listen to what an expert on laces says. Mr. Leopold Friedberger of New York, an authority on laces. He says, it's hard to believe the lace table set can be offered for so little. But it is offered for just 35 cents, and Betty Crocker's name from an apple pie quick package front. Just 35 cents. No stamps, please. Send for your 9-piece lace set now. Address, Famous Jury Trials, Box 1400, Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's Famous Jury Trials, Box 1400, Minneapolis, Minnesota. This offer is made so you'll try Apple Pie Quick.
and now back to the courtroom where the jury is filed back after many hours of deliberation. The judge asks,
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a decision?
We have, Your Honor.
What is your verdict?
We find the defendant, Bessie Malden, not guilty.
Not guilty, said the jury. But many people felt that Mrs. Malden did kill and was exonerated only through the personality of her defense counsel. However, Detective Latham continued to investigate and several weeks later stepped into Alex Fraser's apartment.
Well, is this a social call, Detective Latham?
That depends on how fast you can explain things, Fraser.
I don't understand.
We just got a report from Nevada. Right after Henry was killed, you flew west and married Henry's wife.
Well, yes, I did.
And that's what you were fighting about with Henry. He accused you of stealing his wife, of talking her into a divorce.
No, Henry was glad to get the divorce.
Was he, or did he blame you, the man he set up in business, for breaking up his home? Didn't he threaten to take back the store he financed?
No. That is, maybe he did, but I didn't kill him.
Never mind the rest, Fraser. You're coming to headquarters. The boys might have some questions they want answered.
Under questioning, Alex Fraser broke and admitted the killing. It was true that Henry found out that his wife was getting a divorce because of Alex. Henry was threatening to ruin Alex when Mrs. Malden walked in. Alex took the gun from her, but that suggested a way out. And after further arguing with Henry Nicholas, Alex shot him. At a subsequent trial, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life imprisonment.
Famous Jury Trials is brought to you each week at this same time. And now a reminder that next week, General Mills will present the trial of the People versus Philip Lansing, the story of some city people who came to the North Woods bringing murder. Remember, next week at this same time, Famous Jury Trials will bring you another suspense-filled, dramatic trial.
Court is now adjourned until next week.
Famous Jury Trials is prepared under the direction of a noted New York attorney. All names, times, and places are fictional. Famous Jury Trials was written this week by Milton J. Kramer. The cast included Norman Rose as narrator and Ruth York as the defense attorney. And this is Don Hancock inviting you to listen next week to another Famous Jury Trial.
This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.